The wine glass in my hand felt heavier than it should have, my grip tightening with every passing second. Across the table, my wife, Elena, laughed, a bright melodic sound that once brought warmth to my heart. Tonight the laugh wasn't for me. It was for him, Daniel. Daniel leaned in close to Elena, whispering something I couldn't hear. Whatever it was, it made her laugh again. Her cheeks flushed with a shade I hadn't seen in years. My stomach churned as I watched her fingers lightly graze his hand. The gesture casual, yet intimate in a way that set my nerves on edge. I need masking the storm brewing inside me. I stepped out onto the patio, letting the winter air slash against my face. It was freezing, but I didn't care. I needed the sting, something sharp to distract me from the suffocating weight of my thoughts. Elena and I had been married for decades. Through every challenge, every joy, I had been her constant. Her partner, her supporter, the man who would have done anything for her. Yet here I was standing outside my own home, feeling like a stranger in my marriage. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of my spiral. I almost ignored it, but the persistent vibration forced me to look. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. You deserve the truth. Check Elena's glove compartment. A friend. I stared at the message, my pulse pounding in my ears. My hands shook, not from the cold, but from the weight of the words. Who had sent this? Was it some cruel joke? Or was it the answer to the question I hadn't dared to ask aloud? I slipped back inside, moving quietly so Elena and Daniel wouldn't notice. They were still at the table, leaning in close. Their laughter now a low murmur. My jaw clenched as I walked past them, grabbing my coat and keys. I'll be back in a bit, I said flatly, not waiting for a response. My heart raced as I stepped into the garage and opened Elena's car. My fingers hovered over the glove compartment, hesitation clawing at me. I took a deep breath and pulled it open. Inside, neatly folded, was a letter. I unfolded it with trembling hands, my eyes scanning the words. It was written in Elena's handwriting, a message filled with affection, longing, and plans. Plans with Daniel, a weekend getaway detailed to the last intimate moment. My vision blurred with rage and heartbreak. I had given her everything, my love, my loyalty, my life. And this was how she repaid me. I gripped the letter tightly, the paper crumpling in my fist. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I sat in the car for what felt like an eternity, staring at the crumpled letter in my hand. My chest heaved as I fought to control my breathing. The words on the paper replayed in my mind, each one a knife twisting deeper into my heart. It wasn't just an affair, it was premeditated, deliberate. She wasn't simply betraying me, she was planning a future with him. My thoughts were a storm of anger, pain, and something I hadn't felt in years, determination. If Elena thought she could walk all over me, then she was about to learn just how wrong she was. I wasn't going to be some passive victim, left in the rubble of her deceit. No, this time I was going to fight back. I tucked the letter into my pocket and returned to the house. My face a mask of indifference. Elena and Daniel didn't even notice me as I walked past the dining room. They were too wrapped up in their little world, their whispered conversations and stolen glances. It made me sick. In our bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wedding photo on the nightstand. I picked it up, my thumb brushing over Elena's smiling face. How could she do this? I had loved her with every fiber of my being. I had built a life with her, sacrificed for her, trusted her, and she had thrown it all away for him. The rage inside me simmered, my mind racing with ideas. Revenge wasn't just a desire, it was a necessity, but I couldn't act on impulse. No, this had to be carefully planned, methodical. If Elena and Daniel wanted to play games, I would make sure they understood the stakes. I started by gathering information. Over the next few days, I paid closer attention to Elena's behavior. I noticed the way she checked her phone more often, her lips curving into a secretive smile as she typed. She was always careful deleting messages and hiding her tracks, but she didn't realize I was watching. Every moment of hers was under my scrutiny now. It wasn't long before I found the next piece of evidence, her phone logged. While she was in the shower, I accessed her phone and found Daniel's number saved under a fake name, Clara. My lips, but not clever enough. I copied the number and began building a case. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted the truth laid bare for the world to see. I wanted her to feel the humiliation and betrayal she had so casually inflicted on me. And I wanted Daniel to know that he had picked the wrong man to cross. The first step in my plan was simple: confrontation, but not with Elena. No, that would come later. First, I needed to rattle Daniel. A few nights later, I parked outside Daniel's apartment complex, my heart pounding, but my mind sharp and focused. I'd done my research. He lived alone in a modest unit on the 3rd floor. Perfect. I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here to plant the seeds of doubt and fear. I knocked on his door, calm but firm. After a few moments, the door opened and there he stood. Daniel looked surprised, his brows furrowing as he recognized me. "Michael," he said, his voice tentative, trying to mask his unease. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, a tight, controlled expression that didn't reach my eyes. "We need to talk." He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if debating whether to let me in. I took a step forward, my presence alone enough to make him retreat slightly. He gestured for me to come in and I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. The apartment was sparse, clean, but impersonal. A few framed photos and a stack of books on a coffee table. Nothing that suggested a man deeply rooted in his life. It made sense. He was the type to drift, to take what he wanted without leaving a mark. "I'm guessing you already know why I'm here," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the storm raging inside me. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, crossing his arms. "Look, Michael, I don't think." "Don't," I interrupted, my tone cutting. "Don't insult me by pretending you don't know. I've seen the messages. I've read the letter. I know what's going on." His face paled slightly, the bravado slipping away. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said quickly. "It just did. Elena and you?" I barked, taking a step closer. He flinched, and I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you understand the destruction you've caused? I never wanted to hurt you." He stammered, his voice weak. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." "And yet, here we are," I said, my voice cold. I leaned in, my gaze locking onto his. "Let me make something very clear, Daniel. You may think you've won, but you haven't. Not even close. You've played your hand, and now it's my turn." His throat bobbed as he swallowed nervously, his confidence crumbling under the weight of my words. I took a step back, letting the silence hang heavy between us. "You should have thought twice before involving yourself with my wife," I continued. "But now, you'll learn that some men don't take betrayal lightly." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out of the apartment, leaving him standing there, visibly shaken. I didn't need to say more. The real revenge was still to come, and I wanted him to stew in his fear and uncertainty. Back at home, I found Elena in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as I entered, her expression unreadable. "You've been out late," she said casually, her tone laced with faint curiosity. "Just went for a drive," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. Not until I had everything in place. Over the following days, I set the rest of my plan into motion. First, I hired a private investigator. If Elena and Daniel thought they were being discreet, they were wrong. The investigator would gather irrefutable evidence of their affair. Photos, messages, even recordings, if necessary. I wanted proof that would destroy any shred of credibility they had. Next, I started reaching out to key people in our lives. Friends, colleagues, even Elena's family. Subtle comments, carefully placed questions, planning the idea that something was off. I didn't need to accuse her outright. I just needed to create doubt. By the time I was ready to expose her, the groundwork would already be laid. Meanwhile, I began taking steps to protect myself financially. I met with a lawyer, ensuring that if this ended in divorce, Elena wouldn't walk away with more than she deserved. I also started redirecting funds into a separate account, preparing for the possibility that she might try to take advantage of me. And through it all, I played my role as the dutiful husband. I smiled when I needed to, pretended not to notice her late nights and secretive behavior. Let her think she was getting away with it. The more comfortable she became, the more devastating the fall would be. Days turned into weeks, and my plan slowly took shape. I had gathered enough evidence to bring their secret world crashing down, but I wasn't done yet. This wasn't just about exposing them. It was about making them feel every ounce of pain they had inflicted on me. One evening, Elena was getting ready for another one of her so-called book club meetings. She stood in front of the mirror, applying her lipstick with practiced ease. Her reflection caught my gaze as I leaned against the doorframe. Arms crossed. "You look nice," I said evenly. She smiled faintly, not turning to face me. "Thanks. It's just a casual night with the girls." The lie rolled off her tongue, so effortlessly that it almost impressed me. Almost. I stepped closer, keeping my expression neutral. "Have fun," I said, placing a soft kiss on her cheek. She tensed slightly, probably and used to my affection these days, but she didn't pull away. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, I went to work. I'd planted a GPS tracker on her car days ago, and now it was time to follow her. I wasn't sure why I felt the need to see it for myself. Maybe to remind myself that what I was doing was justified. The tracker led me to a hotel on the edge of town. I parked a safe distance away and watched as she stepped out of her car, looking around nervously before heading inside. A few minutes later, Daniel arrived, his car pulling up beside hers. My chest tightened as I saw them greet each other with an embrace far too intimate for two people trying to heal their friendship, as she had once so casually put it. I waited for them to disappear inside before making my move. I had already tipped off the private investigator who was stationed discreetly in the lobby, camera in hand. Tonight, I would collect the final piece of the puzzle. The next morning, Elena returned home, wearing the same clothes she'd left in the night before. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, a stack of papers neatly placed in front of me. "Good morning," I said without looking up. She froze for a split second, then forced a casual tone. "Morning, you're up early." I glanced at her, a small smile tugging at my lips. "Couldn't sleep, thought I'd get a head start on the day." I gestured to the stack of papers. "Care to join me? There's something we need to discuss." Her eyes darted to the papers, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "What's all this?" I said, my tone firm but calm. Reluctantly, she took a seat across from me. I slid the first photo across the table, her and Daniel, arm in arm, entering the hotel. Her face went pale, her breath hitching. "What is this?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think you know," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I've known for months, Selina, about you and Daniel, about the lies, the betrayal." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't let them sway me. "Michael, I didn't mean stop." I cut her off. "Spare me the excuses. I've heard enough lies to last a lifetime." She looked down, her hands trembling. "It's not what you think," she said weakly. I laughed bitterly. "Oh, it's exactly what I think. But don't worry, I'm not here to fight with you. I'm here to tell you how this is going to go." I slid another document across the table, a draft of the divorce papers, complete with a financial settlement that left her with nothing more than what she brought into the marriage. Her eyes widened as she scanned the pages. "You can sign these now, or we can take this to court," I said. "But if we go to court, I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done. Your friends, your family, everyone, it's your choice." She stared at me, her expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Michael, please, we can work through this." "I made a mistake, but mistake," I repeated, my voice rising. "A mistake is forgetting our anniversary or burning dinner. What you did wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. Over and over again, you chose to betray me." Tears streamed down her face as she buried her head in her hands. I felt no pity. This was the price of her actions. "And one more thing," I said, my voice cold. "Daniel won't be there to comfort you when this is over. I've already spoken to his boss. Turns out they don't take kindly to employees having affairs with married clients. He'll be lucky to find work in this town again." Her head shot up, her face a mask of horror. "You didn't?" "Oh, I did," I said, standing up. "You thought you could destroy me and walk away and skate? Think again." I left her sitting there, broken and sobbing as I walked out the door. For the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least it was mine to walk. And I intended to walk it without the weight of her betrayal dragging me down. As I drove away from the house, the events of the past few months played over and over in my mind. The betrayal, the lies, the cold looks and whispered conversations. They had chipped away at me, piece by piece. But now, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I wasn't looking back. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. It wasn't over yet. Not until I had ensured both Elena and Daniel faced the full consequences of their actions. I made my way to Daniel's workplace, a sleek corporate office building on the other side of town. Thanks to the private investigator I'd hired, I had learned everything I needed about Daniel, his habits, his weaknesses, and most importantly, his career. He had built his reputation as a spotless image. That image was about to shatter. As I stepped into the lobby, I was greeted by a receptionist with a bright smile. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I'm here to drop off something from Mr. Daniels," I replied smoothly, holding up a sealed envelope. Inside were copies of the incriminating photos, screenshots of messages between him and Elena. In a short, pointed letter explaining why his actions were about to have professional consequences. The receptionist hesitated. "I can leave this with him once he's out of his meeting." "No need," I said, my smile not quite reaching my eyes. "Oh wait," I sat in the waiting area, my calm demeanor masking the storm inside me. Minutes felt like hours until I finally saw Daniel emerge from the glass conference room. His confidence stride faltered when he noticed me. I stood, meeting his gaze, and his face drained of color. "Michael," he said, his voice low and wary as he approached me. "What are you doing here?" I handed him the envelope, my expression unreadable. "Just thought you want to see this before I deliver a copy to your boss. You might want to open it now." He swallowed hard, looking around nervously before tearing open the envelope. As he flipped through the contents, his hands began to shake. "This is a private matter," he stammered. "You can't." "Oh, I can," I said, my tone sharp as a blade. "And I will. You didn't just mess with my life. You jeopardized my marriage, my reputation, everything I built. Now it's your turn to face the fallout." He looked at me, desperation flickering in his eyes. "Please, Michael, don't do this. I'll walk away. I'll leave Elena alone. Just don't ruin my career." I leaned in closer, my voice a low growl. "You should have thought about that before you slept with another man's wife. This is only the beginning, Daniel. You're going to feel the weight of every choice you've made." With that, I turned and walked out, leaving him standing there, clutching the envelope like a lifeline slipping through his fingers. When I returned home later that day, the house was quiet. Elena was still in the kitchen. The divorce paper is sitting untouched on the counter. She looked up as I entered, her face pale and tear-streaked. "I talked to Daniel," I said simply, pulling out a chair and sitting across from her. "He won't be an issue anymore." Her breath hitched and she buried her face in her hands. "Michael, I'm so sorry. I've ruined everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But you're right." I interrupted coldly. "You don't." She flinched, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. I didn't look away. I needed her to feel every ounce of pain she had caused, every moment of doubt and despair I had endured. But I continued after a long silence. "I don't care about your tears. I care about what happens next. You have a choice. Sign the papers or fight me in court and watch as every piece of evidence I have comes to light. It's up to you." She nodded weakly, her hands trembling as she reached for the pen. I watched as she signed her name. Each stroke of the pen, a small victory in a war I hadn't asked for, but had been forced to fight. The following weeks were a blur of legal proceedings and whispered conversations among friends and family. The story spread quickly. Elena and Daniel's affair, the photos, the fallout. Elena moved out of the house, leaving behind the life we had built together. Daniel, true to my prediction, lost his job and found himself ostracized by his colleagues. As for me, I started to rebuild. It wasn't easy. There were days when the weight of it all felt unbearable. But every step forward, every small victory reminded me that I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. One evening, as I stood on the patio of my now quiet home, I looked out at the horizon. The winter air was crisp, the stars bright against the dark sky. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. I had faced the storm, and I had survived. And now, it was time to start anew.